Let us take a quick look at the current board to understand exactly where our key players are standing. Jason Morgan has officially returned, stepping back into a world that has shifted dramatically, leaving him to navigate a minefield of unresolved trauma. He is currently staring at a son, Danny Morgan, who has been pushed to the absolute psychological brink during his father's absence. Danny has been dragged into WSB interrogations, entangled in dangerous situations involving Jack Brennan, and forced to watch the people he loves suffer immensely. More importantly, Danny is currently harboring a massive, explosive, and deeply rooted grudge against Rocco Falconeri. Danny firmly believes that Rocco is the sole reason Jason was forced to take the fall for the shooting of Ross Cullum, enduring months of brutal captivity to protect a teenager's secret. Jason, meanwhile, is trying to step back, meeting with Danny at the Quartermain boathouse and actively considering leaving Sonny Corinthos' mob organization for good to protect his family. The board is set with a traumatized, angry son, a guilty teenager in Rocco, and a weary enforcer who thinks the worst of his nightmare is finally behind him. But this is merely the starting line. Let us explore the first potential future. This could lead to a massive, generational war that forces Jason to completely reevaluate his entire existence and every loyalty he has ever held. In this scenario, Danny's simmering rage toward Rocco Falconeri cannot be contained by Jason's reassurances. Danny, feeling the weight of his father's suffering, decides to take matters into his own hands, seeking a twisted, desperate form of justice for what Rocco's actions cost his family. We could see Danny orchestrating a dangerous situation, perhaps leaking Rocco's secret to the wrong people, or confronting him physically, leading to a catastrophic fallout between the two boys. This puts Jason in the impossible position of having to clean up a violent mess that mirrors his own dark past, desperately trying to stop his son from crossing a line that cannot be uncrossed. The bigger consequence may be how this crisis completely shatters Jason's lifelong loyalty to Sonny Corinthos and the rest of his supposed family. Imagine the psychological toll on Jason when he realizes that while he was locked away in a WSB dungeon, sacrificing his freedom, his body, and his sanity to protect the Corinthos and Falconeri families, absolutely no one stepped up to protect his own son. Jason has spent his entire adult life being the unbreakable shield for Sonny, Carly, and Dante. He has taken bullets, gone to prison, and faked his death for them. If you ask me, the resentment has to build to a boiling point. What happens next may be a quiet, chilling, and absolute severance of ties. Jason could systematically cut Sonny out of his life, looking the mob boss in the eye and blaming him for every tear Danny shed and every danger the boy faced alone. We could see Jason refusing to lift a finger to help Sonny against Jen Sidwell, leaving the Corinthos Empire completely vulnerable to attack. The danger here isn't just to Sonny's business operations, it is to the foundational relationships of the entire show. Jason might decide that the only way to save Danny from the darkness of Port Charles is to become a ruthless, independent operator who answers to no one, effectively turning his back on the very people he once bled for. But we need to look even deeper into the darkness, because there's a chance that the trauma Jason is carrying is not just emotional or philosophical. What if the story takes a much more sinister, physiological turn? This brings us to a completely different future, one that doesn't just shuffle the pieces on the board but flips the entire table over. Looking ahead, what if the WSB did far more than just hold Jason captive in a cell? We know the WSB is capable of horrific psychological manipulation, mind control, and brutal physical torture. What if Jason suffered a severe, undetected head trauma during his months of captivity? Or worse, what if the experimental interrogations, chemical treatments, or relentless beatings he endured triggered something catastrophic and biological inside his brain? I cannot stop thinking about the precedent this show has for medical mysteries completely altering a character's core personality. We all vividly remember the saga of Franco. A brain tumor completely rewrote Franco's character, turning him from a sadistic monster into a victim of his own biology and forcing the entire town to reevaluate his actions. What if we are looking at a Franco 2 scenario, but this time it is happening to the most disciplined, stoic, and controlled man in Port Charles? The story could be heading toward a terrifying reality where Jason begins to experience subtle but escalating symptoms. Blinding migraines, terrifying blackouts, blurred vision, and sudden, completely uncharacteristic bursts of extreme rage. In this terrifying future, Jason starts losing his iron grip on his emotions and his actions. A man who has always been defined by his cold, calculating control suddenly becomes a volatile, unpredictable wild card. He might lash out violently at minor provocations from people like Rick Lansing or even Harrison Chase. He might have terrifying moments where he wakes up with bruised knuckles and absolutely no memory of what he just did or who he just hurt. The danger in this scenario is universal and profound. Everyone in Port Charles is at risk, from his sworn enemies to his closest allies, and most tragically, to the people he loves most. If Jason has a growing brain lesion, a severe traumatic brain injury, or a chemically induced psychosis, his legendary moral compass will completely shatter. He could cross lines. He swore he never would, perhaps even physically threatening Danny in a moment of blind confusion, or turning his lethal skills against Britt Westbourne when she tries to medically intervene. This isn't just a minor variation of his character. This is a total, horrifying deconstruction of Jason Morgan. It turns the ultimate protector into the ultimate unstoppable threat, driven by a biological time bomb ticking away inside his skull. Now, let us explore the most unexpected and shocking path the writers could take. What if Jason's failing mind doesn't just make him lose control, but actively turns his lethal focus against his own history and identity? In this third future, the brain injury or psychological break doesn't just make him a violent wild card, it makes him hyper-focused on a delusional, twisted, and highly organized mission of vengeance. What if Jason's damaged mind rewrites his own memories, convincing him that Sonny Corinthos is not his brother and savior, but the ultimate villain who stole his entire life? Think about the sheer narrative terror of this scenario. In a warped, neurologically damaged state of mind, Jason could look back at his life and see Sonny as a manipulative parasite. He might hallucinate or obsess over the idea that Sonny took advantage of his original brain damage from the Quartermaine car crash decades ago, using him as a weapon and stealing his bright future as a medical student. If that happens, Jason wouldn't just quietly leave the mob, he would actively, systematically seek to destroy it from the inside out. He knows every single secret, every structural weakness, every offshore bank account, every corrupt politician on the payroll, and where every single body is buried. Jason could become the most lethal, terrifying antagonist Sonny has ever faced in his entire life. He wouldn't yell, he wouldn't make threats, he would simply dismantle Sonny's empire with the same cold, terrifying efficiency he used to build it. Very few people are anticipating Jason to become the big bad of Port Charles. This path would flip the entire script, turning the loyal, self-sacrificing enforcer into a mastermind of absolute vengeance, driven by a fractured psyche that truly believes destroying Sonny Corinthos is the only way to free himself and protect Danny from a life of crime. If you ask me, we have to look at what provides the most compelling, award-winning television for the next year. The path that feels most likely, and the one I keep coming back to time and time again, is the medical trauma route, the tragic Franco 2.0 scenario. I know that many hardcore fans might initially reject the idea of seeing their ultimate hero lose his mind and commit dark acts, but from a pure storytelling perspective, it is absolute narrative gold. Steve Burton is an incredible veteran actor who has essentially played the stoic, unmoving, emotionless enforcer for decades. Giving him a storyline where he has to battle his own failing mind, where he has to portray deep vulnerability, agonizing confusion, and terrifying, unbridled rage would be an absolute masterclass in acting. It makes the most sense because it provides a solid biological excuse for massive character shifts and extreme conflict without permanently ruining Jason's heroic legacy. It allows the writers to push Jason to the absolute edge, have him do unforgivable, shocking things to the canvas, and then eventually redeem him once the medical issue is finally discovered, diagnosed, and surgically treated. It creates a deeply tragic, compelling narrative where the audience knows the real Jason is trapped inside his own failing brain, silently screaming for help while his body commits atrocities he would never consciously choose. It is the perfect tragic engine for high-stakes drama that involves the hospital, the mob, and the WSB all at once. But we must look even further down the board because the story does not end with a diagnosis. If that scenario happens, if Jason truly becomes a victim of his own mind and turns into a dangerous, unpredictable, and lethal force, what is the next shockwave? The bigger consequence may be the impossible, soul-crushing burden placed on the people who love him the most. If Jason goes completely rogue, who on earth is going to stop him? The tragedy will ripple outward, forcing people like Danny, Britt Westbourne, and Sonny Corinthos into agonizing, impossible positions. Imagine Danny, who just got his father back after months of grieving, realizing he has to help the police lock him away, or worse, take up arms against his own father to save innocent lives. Imagine Britt, with her extensive medical background and complicated romantic history with Jason, desperately racing against the clock to diagnose and cure a man who views her as an enemy and might not even let her near him without a fight. And imagine Sonny Corinthos, the man who calls Jason his brother, being forced to put a lethal hit out on his best friend because Jason has simply become too dangerous and unpredictable to live. The future consequences of a fractured, neurologically damaged Jason Morgan would completely redefine every major relationship in Port Charles. The story wouldn't just be about saving Jason's life. It would be about how much of their own souls, his friends and family, are willing to destroy in order to stop him before it is too late. The future of Port Charles is expanding into a very dark, deeply tragic, and emotionally devastating territory, and the fallout from Jason's broken mind will last for years to come.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.